My name is Linyu, and I live in a bustling city with a somewhat impetuous atmosphere. Every day, I shuttle between the high-rises, working hard for my life and career. My wife, Xiaowei, is a unique sight in this city. Xiaowei has long, black hair that is as beautiful as black silk, shimmering with a charming luster in the sunlight. Every time she gently shakes her hair, the graceful arc it makes always mesmerizes me. Her eyes are as bright as autumn water, clear as if they could reflect everything in the world. Those eyes often sparkle with a lively light, like the brightest star in the night sky. Her eyelashes are long and curled, and every time she blinks, it's like a butterfly fluttering its wings. Her nose is delicate and small, slightly upturned, adding a touch of playfulness to her face. And her lips, always a light pink, are as delicate as a flower petal, making you want to kiss her. Xiaowei has a slender figure, with a tiny waist that seems like it could be blown over by the wind. Her legs are straight and slender, white as jade, and when she puts on high heels, they exude a unique charm. Every one of her movements is like a carefully choreographed dance, graceful and charming. Walking down the street, she always attracts countless stares. The eyes of those men are full of envy and greed, while the eyes of women are mostly jealousy and disdain. Xiaowei and I have been married for 5 years. In these 5 years, our lives have been plain but happy. I work hard, hoping to give her a better life, and she keeps the house in order and is my strongest support. We go to the movies together on weekends, take walks in the park, and enjoy delicious food together. Those times are the best memories of my life. However, recently I have noticed something strange about Xiaowei. She is coming home later and later. Before, she would always have dinner ready for me when I got home from work. But now, I often find myself sitting alone at the table, looking at the cold food, full of doubts. Every time I ask her why she is so late, she always gives vague answers, saying that she has to work overtime at the office or that she has a friend gathering. Although I am suspicious, I don't think much of it, thinking that she is probably just tired from work and needs some time to relax. Once, I finished work early because I had finished my work ahead of schedule. I was full of joy, thinking that I could surprise Xiaowei, but when I opened the door, I found the house dark. I turned on the lights, and the house was cold and empty, with no sign of Xiaowei. I called her, but she never answered. I became a little worried and paced around the house anxiously. It wasn't until after 11 p.m. that Xiaowei finally came home. She was wearing a dress I had never seen before. Her hair was a mess, and she looked a little tired. I asked her where she had been, and she just said casually that she had dinner with a colleague and then went to karaoke for a while. I looked at her and always felt that her eyes were avoiding mine, but I chose to believe her. After that, Xiaowei's late returns became more and more frequent. Sometimes she didn't even come home until the early morning. I waited for her until I fell asleep, but she wasn't back when I woke up. I started to pay attention to some of the details about her and noticed that she often had a strange perfume smell on her. The scent was strong and pungent, completely different from the light and elegant perfume she used to like. I asked her what perfume it was, but she said it was her colleague who sprayed it on her. Although I was skeptical, I didn't pursue it further. Xiaowei also started buying a lot of new clothes. Although she had liked to buy clothes before, she had never been so crazy about it as she was now. Her wardrobe was full of fashionable clothes of all kinds, some of which had not even had the tags cut off. Every day before going out, she would spend a long time in front of the mirror, carefully getting dressed, picking out clothes and matching jewelry, as if she were going to an important banquet. Watching her busy figure, my unease grew stronger and stronger. Moreover, she always set a password on her phone. In the past, we could look at each other's phones at will, but now, every time I get near her phone, she nervously moves it away. Once, while she was in the shower, I tried to open her phone, but no matter what I did, I couldn't unlock the password. I felt a little angry, thinking that she was hiding something from me. When she came out of the shower, I confronted her about why she had set a password, but she said it was to protect her privacy and that I shouldn't go through her things. I looked at her angry face and felt a little guilty, so I didn't pursue it any further. But my curiosity was getting stronger and stronger. I always felt that Xiao Wei was hiding something from me, so I began to quietly observe her every move. I noticed that when she was talking to me, her eyes would often wander, as if she were thinking about something else. Sometimes she would suddenly become lost in thought, with a look on her face that I had never seen before. That look had a mixture of expectation, confusion, and a hint of sadness. I knew that changes were coming to our lives, and I was a little scared of them. I didn't know what was wrong with Xiao Wei, and I didn't know if our relationship could remain as good as it had been. But I decided that I had to find out what was going on. I didn't want to lose Xiao Wei, and I didn't want to lose the happiness we had once had. I began to vow secretly that no matter what happened, I would protect our home and our love. However, I had no idea that what awaited me next would be a truth that I could not bear. As the days passed, Xiao Wei's strange behavior did not subside in the slightest. I spent day after day in this state of unease and doubt. I tried to convince myself that Xiao Wei was just under too much work pressure or experiencing some temporary trouble. But my intuition deep down told me that things were not that simple. I started to pay attention to her social media, although I knew it might not be a good idea, but I really couldn't control my curiosity. One time, Xiao Wei went to the kitchen to cook and left her phone on the sofa in the living room. I looked at the phone and hesitated for a long time, but finally picked it up. I tried her usual password a few times, but it didn't work. Just as I was about to give up, the phone screen suddenly lit up with a new message. I glanced at it subconsciously and saw that it was from a strange man. The message content was just two simple words: "I miss you." My heart sank, and my hands trembled uncontrollably. I quickly put the phone back in place and pretended that nothing had happened. But from that moment on, I knew that Xiao Wei's situation was far more complicated than I had imagined. I began to calculate in my heart how to face it all and how to uncover the secret in Xiao Wei's heart. Ever since I discovered the "thinking of you" message on Xiao Wei's phone, a dark cloud has hung over me, unable to dispel the unease and doubt. On the surface, I maintained a normal rhythm of life, working hard, and I didn't show too much difference to Xiao Wei. But in my heart, my concern for her became closer and closer, and every slight movement could affect me. One weekend afternoon, the sunlight shone through the windows and fell on the floor of the living room, creating patches of dappled light and shadow. Xiao Wei said she was going out to the mall, and I watched her carefully select clothes and match jewelry, looking serious as if she were going on an extremely important date. An impulse welled up in my heart, and I wanted to follow her to find out what was going on, but I ultimately resisted. I just quietly jotted down the time she left after she went out the door. After Xiao Wei left, I was restless in the house. After much hesitation, I decided to go out and see where she had gone. I put on my jacket and hat, trying to make myself look inconspicuous, and walked in the direction Xiao Wei had left. When I arrived near the mall, I saw Xiao Wei's familiar figure from afar. She was standing in front of the mall entrance, seemingly waiting for something, her eyes occasionally scanning the other end of the street, her face showing a hint of anticipation and nervousness. Before long, a man appeared in my line of sight. He was tall, wearing a black trench coat. His hair was a little messy, but it gave off an uninhibited feeling. He had a steady pace, and every step seemed to carry a unique aura. When he walked up to Xiao Wei, a smile immediately appeared on her face. That smile was once so familiar to me, but at this moment it made me feel incredibly strange. I hid in the corner and watched them carefully. The man wore a mysterious smile on his face, and his eyes revealed a depth and complexity that made it impossible for me to read his mind. He talked to Xiao Wei, occasionally reaching out to touch her arm lightly, while Xiao Wei bowed her head slightly, a blush rising to her face. Seeing this, my heart felt like it was being stabbed hard, and anger burned within me. I suppressed the urge to rush up to them and confront them, and decided to find out who this man was first. I followed them from a distance, watching them enter the mall and walk between the shops together. They seemed to get along very well, whispering to each other from time to time and occasionally bursting out laughing. As I watched Xiao Wei's happy expression, the pain in my heart grew even stronger. We had also had such times, but now her smile was no longer because of me. After wandering around the mall for a while, they entered a cafe. I found a seat on the street opposite the cafe and watched them through the window. The man and Xiaowei sat in a corner. They sat facing each other, their eyes meeting, as if they were talking about something important. I watched the man's lips move, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. My curiosity and anger kept intertwining. At that moment, I noticed that the man was wearing a strange ring on his hand. The ring was very unique in shape, and it seemed that some mysterious symbols were engraved on it. I felt a stirring in my heart, and I thought that this man must be no ordinary person. I took out my mobile phone and secretly took a few photos of them, hoping to find some clues about him through these photos. In the cafe, Xiaowei and the man sat for a long time. They sometimes talked and sometimes were silent, and the atmosphere seemed a little delicate. I looked at Xiaowei's expression, from initially happy to later somewhat hesitant and uneasy, and guessed in my heart what they were talking about. Finally, they got up and left the cafe, and I hurriedly followed. They walked along the street, still chatting and laughing along the way. I followed closely behind them, not daring to let up for a second. When they reached a park, the man suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked at Xiaowei, his eyes full of deep affection. Xiaowei also looked at him, her face showing a complex expression of emotion, confusion, and a hint of struggle. Just then, the man suddenly reached out his hand and gently pulled Xiaowei into his arms. Xiaowei did not resist, but quietly leaned into his embrace. My vision went blurry, and tears welled up in my eyes. I felt my world collapse instantly. The wife I once loved so dearly was in the arms of another man. I couldn't bear it anymore, so I rushed up to them and loudly asked what they were doing. When Xiaowei saw me, a look of panic crossed her face. She quickly broke free from the man's embrace, her eyes full of panic. The man, on the other hand, looked calm. He looked at me, frowned slightly, and seemed a little displeased with my appearance. Xiaowei stuttered and explained that this was a friend of hers, and they had just happened to meet and hang out together. I looked at her, my heart filled with disappointment and anger. I didn't believe her explanation. I questioned who the man was, but he just smiled indifferently and didn't answer my question. I looked at them, and the pain and anger in my heart made me lose my mind. I rushed up to punch the man, but Xiaowei stopped me. Xiaowei cried and begged me not to be impulsive, saying that we could talk about it when we got home. As I looked at her crying face, the anger in my heart subsided a little, but the pain in my heart could not be healed easily. In the end, I followed Xiaowei back home. The whole way, we didn't say a word, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. When we got home, Xiaowei sat on the sofa, head down, afraid to look at me. I looked at her, my heart full of questions and pain. I didn't know what had happened to our marriage, and I didn't know how to face what was in front of me. I sat opposite Xiaowei and looked at her haggard face. My anger gradually turned to helplessness and sadness. I took a deep breath and asked her who the man was and what exactly was her relationship with him. Xiaowei was silent for a long time, and finally said that the man was the caretaker of a mutant bat cub. They met by chance and were just casual friends. I looked at her and didn't believe her. I asked her why she had hidden it from me and why she had been acting so strangely recently. Xiaowei cried and said that she had chosen to hide it because she didn't think I would understand her relationship with that man. She also said that there really wasn't anything between her and that man. They just got along well. I looked at Xiaowei and my heart was full of conflict. On the one hand, I didn't want to believe that she would betray me, but on the other hand, the facts in front of me made it impossible for me to ignore. I didn't know what to do. I just felt that my world had become a mess. From then on, the relationship between Xiaowei and I became very delicate. Although we still lived together as before, there was no longer the intimacy and trust that we once had. I was suspicious of Xiaowei's every move, and Xiaowei seemed to sense my change. She became more cautious, but she could never dispel my doubts. I began to secretly investigate the identity of the mysterious man, hoping to find some evidence to prove Xiaowei's relationship with him. I used various channels to inquire about the caretaker of the mutant bat cub, hoping to find some clues from it. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I really can't stand the feeling of being cheated on. I must find out the truth. In the course of my investigation, I found very little information about the man. He seems to be a very mysterious person. The fact that his work involves mutant bat pups makes me feel a little uneasy. I don't know what kind of impact these mutant bat pups will have on Xiaowei, nor do I know the man's real intentions in approaching Xiaowei. As the days passed, I made little progress in my investigation, but my suspicions about Xiaowei grew deeper and deeper. Our relationship also became increasingly tense, and a fierce quarrel could break out at any time. I don't know how long our marriage can last, or what the future holds. And that mysterious man is like a shadow, always looming over our lives, making me feel incredibly oppressed and terrified. I know that I must uncover his true identity as soon as possible, otherwise, Xiaowei and I's marriage may really come to an end. Ever since I caught Xiaowei with the mysterious man, my life has been completely overshadowed. On the surface, Xiaowei and I still maintain a seemingly peaceful married life, getting up, going to work, and coming home every day as usual. But beneath this appearance of peace is the turbulent sea of doubt and pain within me. After returning home, I paid extra attention to Xiaowei's every move, and any slight change would arouse my suspicion. Xiaowei seemed to have noticed my unusual behavior, and she became more cautious. She seemed to be weighing every word and action, creating an invisible divide between us. Xiaowei began to dress up more often. Every morning, she would spend a lot of time in front of the dressing table, selecting suitable clothes, matching exquisite jewelry, and applying heavier makeup than before. She would repeatedly adjust the angle of her hair in the mirror, her eyes revealing a sense of expectation, as if she were going to meet someone extremely important. New clothes were constantly being added to her wardrobe, and the style of those clothes was very different from her previous preferences. Most of them were fashionable and sexy styles, as if to cater to a specific person. One day, while organizing my closet, I found an unfamiliar men's shirt. The style and size of the shirt did not belong to me. The faint scent of laundry detergent was mixed with a strange tobacco smell. My heart sank, and I clutched the shirt tightly in my hand. The image of Xiaowei with that mysterious man flashed through my mind. I questioned Xiaowei about the origin of the shirt, and her eyes momentarily flashed with panic, before she stammered and explained that a colleague had temporarily left it with her. But the way she was evasive made it impossible for me to believe her explanation. Xiaowei's phone remains her secret fortress, and she has never revealed the password to me. She never lets go of her phone, even when she goes to the kitchen to cook or to the bathroom. Whenever the phone rings, she quickly picks it up, glances at me warily, and then goes aside to quietly reply to the message. Once, while she was taking a shower, I tried again to unlock her phone, but still to no avail. Just as I was about to give up, the screen of her phone lit up, and there was a message from the mysterious man which read, "Meet at the usual place tonight." My heart instantly sank, and a flood of anger and pain washed over me. I began to keep an eye on Xiaowei's daily whereabouts. She always went out on various excuses, sometimes saying she was working overtime, sometimes saying she was meeting up with friends, but every time she came back she looked tired but excited. I secretly followed her a few times and found that she always went to some remote cafes or parks, and there I could always see the shadow of that mysterious man. When they were together, they behaved intimately, not at all like ordinary friends. Xiaowei's face was filled with a happy smile, an expression I hadn't seen on her face in a long time, and that smile, at the moment, was like a sharp blade, piercing my heart. Once, I followed them to the vicinity of an abandoned factory. I watched them walk into the factory from afar, my heart filled with doubt and unease. I followed carefully, hiding in a corner to observe them. The factory was dark and damp, filled with a pungent smell. I saw Xiaowei standing with the mysterious man, as if discussing something important. The mysterious man was holding a container similar to a test tube in his hand, containing some unknown liquid. Xiaowei was intently looking at the container, her eyes revealing a hint of curiosity and awe. Suddenly, the mysterious man's phone rang. He glanced at it, and his face became grave. He said a few words to Xiaowei and then hurriedly left the factory. Xiaowei stood still, her eyes betraying a hint of loss. I took the opportunity to go into the factory and try to find out what the hell they were up to. I searched around the factory and finally found some documents and materials in a corner. Most of the documents were about the research on mutant bat cubs, which mentioned some dangerous experiments and potential risks. I was shocked and realized the seriousness of the situation. It turned out that the mysterious man's work was not just looking after mutant bat cubs, but also involved some dangerous experiments. Xiao Wei was with him and she might be in danger. I decided to take these documents away as evidence, and also wanted to find out what role Xiao Wei was playing in all this. After returning home, I carefully studied the documents and found some descriptions of the mutant bat cub's special abilities and some experimental data that could pose a threat to humans. The more I read, the more frightened I became, and the more puzzled I was by Xiao Wei's actions. Why was she with such a dangerous person? Did she know the dangers of these experiments? I decided to confront Xiao Wei again. When I laid the documents in front of her, her face instantly turned pale. She looked at the documents with fear and guilt in her eyes. I questioned her about what was going on, and she fell silent for a long time before finally speaking the truth. It turned out that Xiao Wei met the mysterious man while participating in a public welfare activity. He introduced his work to Xiao Wei and told her the story of the mutant bat cub. Xiao Wei was attracted by his mystery and uniqueness and gradually developed a favorable impression of him. As their relationship deepened, Xiao Wei discovered that his work involved some dangerous experiments, but she was already deeply involved and unable to extricate herself. She had tried to leave him, but every time she was impressed by his sweet words. As I listened to Xiao Wei's explanation, I felt a mixture of emotions. I was angry at her betrayal, but also worried about her situation. I told her that these experiments could pose a great danger, and that she must immediately sever her relationship with the mysterious man. Xiao Wei promised me with tears in her eyes, but I knew that things might not be that simple. Since then, I have been keeping a closer eye on Xiao Wei. I hope to get her away from the mysterious man as soon as possible and return to the peaceful life we once had. But Xiao Wei's behavior has become even more strange. Sometimes she secretly contacts the mysterious man, and when I find out, she cries and promises me that it won't happen again. Our lives have fallen into a vicious cycle. My suspicion of Xiao Wei grows deeper and deeper, while Xiao Wei vacillates between me and the mysterious man. I don't know how long this will continue, nor do I know if our marriage can be saved. But I know that I cannot give up easily. I must protect Xiao Wei and, for the sake of our once love, try to find a solution to the problem. In the process, I have not stopped investigating the mysterious man. I have tried to understand his background and motives through various channels. I discovered that he is a scientific freak with a crazy obsession with mutant creatures. His experiments may pose a threat to the entire city, and Xiao Wei is likely just a tool he is using. I decided to take action to stop the mysterious man's dangerous experiments and also to completely free Xiao Wei from his control. I began to collect evidence and prepare to report his actions to the relevant authorities. But I knew that it would be a tough battle, and I had to be careful not to let the mysterious man detect my intentions. Otherwise, Xiao Wei might be in even more danger. As the days passed, the tension between Xiao Wei and I remained high, but I didn't give up. I believed that if I persisted, I would be able to uncover the mystery man's true identity and get our lives back on track. In the process, I also gained a deep understanding of the complexity and fragility of love, and the importance of trust in a marriage. I hoped that we could overcome this difficult time and regain the happiness we once had. After I discovered Xiao Wei's many secrets with the mysterious man and confronted her, it seemed that peace had returned, but in fact, there were still hidden currents. I never let up on my concern for Xiao Wei, and deep down, I was always worried that she would remain connected to the mysterious man. It was an ordinary evening. The afterglow of the setting sun spread across the city streets, casting a warm yellow veil over everything. I had finished a tiring day's work and was trudging home with heavy footsteps. The figure of Xiao Wei kept popping up in my mind along the way, along with images of her with the mysterious man. My heart was full of anguish and pain. When I reached the end of the alley not far from home, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. I looked more closely and saw that it was Xiao Wei. She was wearing a white dress, a gift I had once given her, but at the moment, it made me feel extremely uncomfortable to see her wearing it. Next to her stood the mysterious man, the two of them whispering to each other in low voices, their expressions focused. My heart tightened, and my footsteps involuntarily quickened as I walked towards them. I tried to make my movements look natural, not wanting to attract their attention. As I gradually drew closer, I heard Xiao Wei say softly, "I really don't know what to do anymore. He has discovered a lot, and I'm scared." The mysterious man gently took hold of Xiao Wei's hand and comforted her. "Don't worry. As long as I'm here, he won't do anything to us. As long as you do what I say, everything will be fine." Hearing their conversation, my anger instantly rose. I could no longer suppress the anger in my heart, so I rushed forward and yelled, "What the hell are you doing? Xiao Wei, didn't you promise me to break up with him?" Xiao Wei's face instantly turned pale when she saw me, and her eyes were filled with panic and confusion. She subconsciously tried to break free from the mysterious man's hand, but the man held on tightly, not showing any signs of letting go. The mysterious man looked at me and gave a dismissive smile, saying, "Lin Yu, don't get excited. Xiao Wei and I were just discussing something. It's not as complicated as you think." I looked at him and said angrily, "Don't try to argue here. I already know what's going on between you two. Don't think you can hide it from me. Xiao Wei, you have to give me a reasonable explanation." Xiao Wei's lips trembled slightly, tears welled in her eyes, and she choked as she said, "Lin Yu, I'm really conflicted. I know I'm wrong, but I just can't control myself. He treats me very well, and being with him, I can feel a different kind of feeling." Hearing Xiao Wei's words, my heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a sharp blade, and the pain made it hard to breathe. I looked at Xiao Wei and said disappointedly, "After so many years of marriage, haven't I been good to you? Was our once strong relationship so fragile? How could you do this to me?" Xiao Wei cried, "Lin Yu, I know I've wronged you, but I've really fallen too deeply, and I don't know how to turn back." The mysterious man said coldly from the side, "Lin Yu, you can't force a relationship. Xiao Wei doesn't love you anymore, so stop pestering her." I looked at the mysterious man, and the anger in my heart reached its peak. I rushed up to him, wanting to punch him, but he deftly avoided it. He looked at me, his eyes full of provocation, and said, "Lin Yu, calm down. You're only going to make Xiao Wei hate you more. If you really love her, you should respect her choice." I looked at him, angrily saying, "You bastard, who are you to say this? You're just a liar who used Xiao Wei." Seeing that we were about to fight, Xiao Wei hurried over, put herself between us, and cried, "Stop fighting! Stop fighting! This will only make things worse." I looked at Xiao Wei, and the anger in my heart gradually subsided, replaced by a deep sense of helplessness and pain. I knew that fighting at that moment would not solve anything, and it would only make our relationship worse. I took a deep breath and said to Xiao Wei, "Xiao Wei, I'll give you one more chance. You must choose between me and him. If you choose him, we'll get a divorce and I won't bother you again. But if you choose me, you must completely sever ties with him and never have any contact with him again." Xiao Wei looked at me, her eyes full of conflict and pain. She lowered her head and remained silent for a long time. The mysterious man looked at Xiao Wei and said softly, "Xiao Wei, come with me. I can give you the life you want, he can't." Xiao Wei looked up at the mysterious man, a hint of hesitation flashing in her eyes, then looked at me again, her eyes full of guilt. She finally said, "Lin Yu, I need time to think about it." I looked at her, feeling a sense of despair in my heart, and said, "Okay, I'll give you time, but you'd better make a decision soon. Otherwise, there really won't be any chance between us." After saying that, I turned around and left. Walking home, I felt an immense weight in my heart. Once, I thought our love was unbreakable, but now it is so fragile. I don't know what choice Xiao Wei will make in the end, nor do I know if our marriage can still be saved. But I know that no matter what the outcome is, I must face reality. When I got home, I sat on the sofa and looked at the empty room, feeling lonely and helpless. I thought about all the little things we had done together, the good memories, but now they had become sharp knives, stabbing my heart. I couldn't understand why Xiao Wei had become like this, what had gone wrong in our relationship. In the following days, Xiao Wei never gave me an answer. She continued to go out early in the morning and return late at night, looking haggard. I tried to communicate with her, but she always avoided the subject. I knew that she was also struggling painfully, but I was unable to help her make a decision. One night, I was lying in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I heard Xiao Wei gently enter the room and then sit down by the bed. I pretended to be asleep, wanting to hear what she would say. Xiao Wei sat quietly for a while, then let out a soft sigh and said, "Lin Yu, I really don't know what to do. I don't want to lose you, but I can't let go of him. I know I'm wrong, but I really can't control my feelings." Hearing Xiao Wei's words, my heart ached. I opened my eyes and looked at her, saying, "Xiao Wei, I've been waiting for you to make a decision. No matter what you choose, I hope you will be happy. But if you choose him, I hope you can let go of me completely and not give me any hope." Xiao Wei looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes again. She nodded and said, "I will make a decision as soon as possible." After that, she stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the night sky, and didn't speak for a long time. I looked at her back, my heart full of helplessness and pain. I don't know what our future will be like, but I know that our relationship can never go back to the way it was. While waiting for Xiao Wei to make a decision, I did not stop investigating the mysterious man. I found that his experiments were becoming more and more dangerous, and had already begun to pose a potential threat to the surrounding environment and residents. I was even more determined to stop him. No matter what Xiao Wei's final choice was, I could not let him continue to endanger society. As the days passed, it seemed that Xiao Wei's decision became more and more difficult, and I, in pain and anxiety, waited for the unknown outcome. I don't know how our lives will change when Xiao Wei makes her decision, but I know that I must face everything bravely, no matter the outcome. During that long and agonizing wait, every minute and every second felt like a dull knife slowly cutting into my heart. Xiao Wei's silence was like a heavy stone weighing me down. I mechanically repeated the routine of going to work and coming home every day, my eyes vacant, as if my soul had been sucked out. Finally, on a cloudy evening, Xiao Wei returned home early. I was sitting on the sofa when I saw her come in. Her footsteps were a little unsteady, and her eyes were full of fatigue and confusion. She slowly walked up to me, sat down, took a deep breath and seemed to be gathering her courage. I looked at her quietly without saying a word, waiting for her to speak. Xiao Wei's lips trembled slightly. After a long while, she said hoarsely, "Lin Yu, I've made up my mind." My heart tightened sharply, and I subconsciously clenched my fists. I stared at her, trying to guess her choice from her expression. Xiao Wei looked up, her eyes full of tears. She looked at me and said slowly, "I've thought it over and I can't leave you. These past few days I've been struggling with pain. I know I've made an unforgivable mistake, and I've wronged you. The time I spent with him, although it had some different feelings, was all illusory. The person I truly love is you, and the years we've spent together." Hearing Xiao Wei's words, my heart was filled with a mixture of emotions. Surprise, emotion, and a trace of unspeakable bitterness. I looked at her and said softly, "Xiao Wei, are you sure? Can you really sever ties with him completely? I hope you didn't make this decision out of pity for me or on a whim." Xiao Wei nodded firmly and said, "I'm sure, Lin Yu. I've made it clear to him that I will have no contact with him again. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for my mistakes." I looked into Xiao Wei's sincere eyes, and the defenses in my heart finally completely collapsed. I reached out and embraced her tightly in my arms, unable to hold back the tears. However, things were not as simple as we had imagined. Just when we thought everything would return to normal, the mysterious man refused to let go. One night, Xiao Wei and I were having dinner at home when we suddenly heard a knock on the door. I stood up guardedly, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. It was the mysterious man. My heart sank and I turned to Xiaowei. Her face instantly turned pale, and her eyes were filled with fear. I said to Xiaowei, "Hide in your room and don't come out." Then, I took a deep breath and opened the door. The mysterious man saw me and a hideous smile appeared on his face. He said, "Lin Yu, do you really think that Xiaowei will come back to you?" She was just confused. "She loves me, and one day, she will come back to me." I looked at him and said angrily, "Don't be delusional. Xiaowei has already decided to sever ties with you, so don't bother us anymore." The mysterious man sneered and said, "Humph. Do you think you can get rid of me? You are so naive. Let me tell you, the experiments I did were not just to satisfy my curiosity. Those mutant bat cubs have a huge amount of energy hidden within them, and I will use them to achieve my goals. Xiaowei is also involved, and she knows a lot of my secrets. If she leaves me, I won't let her get away with it." Hearing the mysterious man's words, I was shocked. I turned my head and looked in the direction of the room, my heart full of worry. I said to the mysterious man, "Don't threaten us. Xiaowei doesn't know anything. Even if she knows something, she was deceived by you. The dangerous experiments you have done have already endangered society. I won't let you continue to do whatever you want." The mysterious man looked at me, a flash of madness in his eyes, and said, "You think you can stop me? You are so presumptuous. I have made all preparations, and no one can stop me. However, for Xiaowei's sake, I can give you a chance. As long as you stop interfering in my affairs, I can let you go. Otherwise, you will all regret it." I looked at the mysterious man, my heart filled with anger and determination. I said, "Don't even think about it. I won't let you get away with it. I've already obtained some evidence of your dangerous experiments, and I'll turn it over to the authorities so they can punish you." When the mysterious man heard what I said, his face instantly turned ashen. He said viciously, "You bastard, how dare you? If you dare to do this, I'll make you pay." With that, he turned around and left. I closed the door and felt a wave of fear. I knew that we had completely angered the mysterious man and that he would not let us off lightly. I walked into the room and saw Xiaowei curled up on the bed, trembling. I walked over to her, put my arms around her and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. I won't let him hurt you." Xiaowei cried, "Lin Yu, I really didn't know he would be so crazy. When I was with him, I was just enchanted by his sweet words. I really didn't think he would do such dangerous things." I stroked Xiaowei's hair and whispered, "It's okay, Xiaowei. We'll face it together. I believe that justice will triumph over evil." From then on, Xiaowei and I became cautious in our lives. We were always on guard against the mysterious man's revenge, and at the same time, I also accelerated the pace of collecting evidence. I collected a large amount of evidence about the mysterious man's dangerous experiments through various channels, including those documents, photos, and some video materials. Finally, with my efforts, the evidence was almost collected. I decided to hand over the evidence to the relevant departments and let them deal with this matter. On the way to submit the evidence, Xiaowei and I were both extremely nervous and worried. We didn't know if the mysterious man would take action, or what our future would hold. After we submitted the evidence to the relevant department, a huge weight was finally lifted from our hearts. However, we did not let down our guard. We knew that the mysterious man would not give up easily, and that he would likely take even more crazy actions to retaliate against us. Sure enough, in the days following the submission of evidence, we encountered some strange things. Mysterious things kept appearing outside our door. Sometimes it was a threatening letter. Sometimes it was some damaged items. Our lives were completely disrupted, and we lived in fear and anxiety every day. But we were not intimidated. We encouraged and supported each other, firmly believing that we would be able to overcome this difficult time. Finally, with the efforts of the relevant departments, the mysterious man was successfully arrested. His dangerous experiments were also completely terminated, and he will pay the price for what he did. When we learned this news, our hearts were filled with joy and relief. We hugged each other tightly, and tears once again welled up in our eyes. After going through all this, our feelings have become even deeper, and we cherish each other even more. We knew that our lives could finally get back on track and that we would create a better future together. In the process, I also deeply realized the importance of trust and loyalty. Love is not just about sweetness and romance, but also about supporting and sticking together in the face of difficulties and setbacks. I believe that as long as we have love in our hearts, there is no difficulty that we cannot overcome. And Xiaowei also proved her love and determination for me with her actions. Our marriage will be sublimated through this ordeal. After the mysterious man was captured, it seemed that our lives returned to normal. However, Xiaowei was caught up in even deeper struggles. On the surface, we lived as usual, cooking together, going for walks, and occasionally joking around. But I could clearly feel that Xiaowei's mind was not here. At night, Xiaowei often wakes up from nightmares. Her body trembles in the dark, her forehead covered in cold sweat. I will hold her tightly and comfort her softly, but the fear and confusion in her eyes will not go away for a long time. She has become quiet and withdrawn, sometimes not saying a word all day. She just sits quietly by the window, staring into the distance, her eyes revealing a deep sense of self-reproach and pain. One day, when I came home from work, I saw Xiaowei sitting on the sofa in the living room with red, puffy eyes, obviously having just cried. My heart tightened, and I quickly walked over to her and put my arms around her. Xiaowei leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Linyu, I feel so dirty. I've done so many wrong things. I don't deserve your love." I stroked her hair tenderly and said, "Xiaowei, the past is in the past. We must all look to the future. You were just temporarily lost. I believe in you and I am willing to face this together with you." Xiaowei, however, shook her head and tears welled up in her eyes again. "But I can't stop thinking about the time I spent with him. Those images are like nightmares, flashing through my mind constantly. I feel like my soul has been tainted. I'm so scared that you'll one day grow tired of me and leave me." I took her hand firmly and said firmly, "Xiaowei, you have to trust me. My love for you will never change. No matter what you've done, I'll always be by your side. Let's work together to forget the unpleasant past and start over." However, Xiaowei's struggle did not end there. She became sensitive and suspicious, and was full of doubts about my every move. Once I came home late because I had to work overtime. When Xiaowei saw me, her eyes were full of vigilance, and she questioned me about whether I had someone else on the side. I patiently explained to her, but she didn't believe me and even started to cry. I looked at her fragile appearance and my heart was full of helplessness and pain. In order to help Xiaowei regain her confidence and happiness, I decided to take her on a trip. We chose a quiet seaside town with endless sea, golden sand beaches, and fresh air. I hoped that this trip would help Xiaowei forget the pain of the past and rediscover the beauty of life. At the beach, we walked hand in hand on the sand beneath our feet soft and delicate. Xiaowei's face showed a smile she hadn't had in a long time, and there was a glimmer in her eyes. We watched the sun rise and set together, picked shells on the beach, and tasted the local delicacies. Those days made us feel like we were back when we were first in love, simple and happy. However, the good times didn't last long. One day, as we were sitting in a cafe by the sea, Xiaowei suddenly saw someone who looked a little like the mysterious man. Her face instantly turned pale and her body began to tremble. I quickly took her hand and comforted her. "Xiaowei, don't be afraid. That's not him. He's been locked up and he won't hurt you anymore." But Xiaowei couldn't control her emotions. She stood up and rushed out of the cafe. I hurried after her and saw Xiaowei crying on the rocks by the sea. I walked up to her and held her tightly, saying, "Xiaowei, don't be afraid. It's all over now. You have to trust me and our love." Xiaowei cried, "Linyu, I'm really scared. I feel like I'll never be able to escape from his shadow. What should I do?" I said softly, "Xiaowei, we can't let the past haunt us. We have to face it bravely and step out of it step by step. I will always be by your side, to help you." Since then, Xiaowei's mood has become even more unstable. Sometimes she would suddenly become very happy, joking and laughing with me. but sometimes she would fall into deep self-blame and pain, silently crying alone. I know that she is experiencing a fierce struggle within, wanting to forget the past and start again, but those memories cling to her like demons. To help Xiaowei, I began to research a lot of information and learn how to help people who have experienced psychological trauma to overcome their past. I took her to see a psychologist, hoping that professional help would enable her to recover as soon as possible. Under the guidance of the psychologist, Xiaowei slowly began to open up and express her inner pain and fear. During this process, I also deeply experienced the power of love. No matter how volatile Xiaowei's emotions were, I was always by her side, giving her support and encouragement. I believe that as long as we have love in our hearts, we will be able to overcome any difficulties. As time passed, Xiaowei's condition gradually improved. She began to be able to face the past more calmly and was no longer as easily irritated as before. She also smiled more and more, and our lives gradually returned to normal. One day, Xiaowei looked at me with gratitude and love in her eyes and said, "Linyu, thank you for your companionship and support. You have made me feel the beauty of life again and given me the courage to face my past mistakes. I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life loving you." I looked at her and was filled with happiness. I said, "Xiaowei, this is a result of our joint efforts. I love you too, and I hope that our lives will always be this happy." However, we both knew that there might still be some shadows in Xiaowei's heart, and it might take a long time to completely eliminate them. But we believed that as long as we loved each other and supported each other, we would be able to get through this difficult time together and welcome an even better future. In the process, I also realized that love is not just about being together in the good times, but also about sticking together in the bad times. Our relationship has become even deeper during this ordeal, and we cherish each other even more. I believe that no matter what difficulties we encounter in the future, we will be able to face them together and create a happy life of our own. As the days go by, Xiaowei's smile grows wider and wider, and our lives become more and more beautiful. Although we occasionally think back to that painful past, we have both been able to face it with a more peaceful mind. We know that although that experience was painful, it also made us appreciate and be grateful for what we have. We look forward to every day in the future, and hope that our love will continue to grow and flourish over the years. Xiaowei's condition gradually improved, and our lives slowly returned to normal. I thought the dark clouds had finally dispersed, and we could finally enjoy our simple, happy lives. However, fate seems to like to play tricks, and a sudden crisis struck without warning. It was an ordinary weekend. Xiaowei and I went to the supermarket together to buy groceries. The sun was shining, the streets were bustling, and people's faces were full of relaxed smiles. Xiaowei was in a good mood too. She was like a child, darting between the shelves, picking out her favorite snacks. I felt warm in my heart as I watched her cheerful figure, and I felt that this was the kind of life I wanted. Just as we were about to check out, the supermarket TV screen flickered a few times, and then an urgent news broadcast broke the silence. The news anchor's voice was serious and urgent. "Attention, citizens. Recently, an accident occurred at a research facility on the outskirts of our city. Mutant bat pups used for research at the facility have escaped, and the relevant departments are currently doing their best to hunt them down. According to expert analysis, these mutant bat pups carry an unknown virus and are extremely dangerous. The public is advised to stay indoors as much as possible and take protective measures." Hearing this news, Xiaowei and I were both stunned. Xiaowei's face instantly turned pale, and her body began to tremble slightly. I held her hand tightly, trying to give her some comfort, but my heart was also filled with worry. I couldn't help but think of the mysterious man who had been the caretaker of the mutant bat pups. Could these escaped bat pups be related to him? When I got home, Xiaowei was silent, her eyes full of fear and anxiety. I turned on the computer to find out more about the crisis. The internet was full of reports about the mutant bat pups, and all kinds of speculation and panic were spreading online. According to some sources, the degree of mutation of these bat pups was beyond imagination, and they had a strong aggressive behavior. Several nearby residents had already been attacked, and the situation was very critical. As I read the news, my unease grew. I turned to Xiaowei and said, "Xiaowei, don't worry too much. The relevant departments will definitely control the situation as soon as possible. You go and rest for a while. I'll figure something out." Xiaowei nodded and slowly walked into the bedroom. I started asking around for details about the incident, trying to find some solutions to the problem. I contacted some friends who worked in scientific research institutions and learned from them that the escape of these mutant bat cubs was most likely caused by humans. Moreover, they suspected that the research team of that mysterious man was behind it. Hearing this news, my heart sank. I knew that if it was really the work of that mysterious man's team, then things would become even more complicated and dangerous. I decided not to tell Xiaowei this news for the time being, so as not to worry her more. However, things developed far worse than I imagined. As time passed, the mutant bat cubs became more and more active, and their traces were found in many areas of the city. People fell into panic, the streets became deserted, shops closed one after another, and the whole city seemed to be shrouded in a layer of gloom. One night, Xiaowei and I were at home when we suddenly heard a loud noise outside. I went to the window, carefully opened the curtains, and saw a group of people running in panic down the street, seemingly being chased by something. I looked more closely and realized that it was a group of mutant bat pups. Their bodies were a strange black color, their eyes glowed green, and the sound of their wings flapping was creepy. I quickly drew the curtains and turned to Xiaowei and said, "Xiaowei, quickly hide in the room and close all the doors and windows." Xiaowei's face was full of fear, and she tightly grasped my arm and said, "Linyu, what should we do? Will these bats break in?" I reassured her, "Don't be afraid, as long as we hide well, they won't be able to get in." Just then, we heard a few screams outside, followed by the sound of breaking glass. My heart tightened, and I realized that things were not good. I picked up a baseball bat nearby and prepared to deal with any possible danger. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Both Xiaowei and I froze. Who could it be at this hour? I signaled to Xiaowei to be quiet, then walked carefully to the door and looked through the peephole. There was a man covered in blood. His face was full of fear, and his eyes were pleading for help. I hesitated for a moment, but then finally opened the door. The man saw me and rushed in, saying over and over, "Help me, help me." I quickly helped him onto the sofa, and then realized that there were several wounds on his body, which were bleeding profusely. I asked him what had happened, and he said, panting, "Those bats, they're horrible. They attack anyone they see. I barely managed to escape here. Please help me." I looked at him in his pain, and my heart was full of sympathy. I quickly got the first aid kit and helped him treat his wounds. Xiaowei also came out of her room, and when she saw the scene, her face turned even paler. She walked over to me and whispered, "Linyu, what should we do? If this continues, we will be in danger too." I looked at her and said firmly, "Don't worry, we will be fine. I will find a way to protect you." However, the crisis did not end there. As time passed, more and more mutant bat cubs appeared near our community. Their cries echoed in the night sky, sending shivers down people's spines. I knew that we had to find a way to leave here as soon as possible, or the consequences would be unimaginable. Just as I was racking my brains for a solution, my phone suddenly rang. I picked it up and heard a familiar voice, which turned out to be the mysterious man. His voice was low and threatening. "Linyu, I never thought we'd meet again. I'm the one behind all this with the baby bats. If you give me Xiaowei, I can guarantee your safety. Otherwise, you will all fall victim to these bats." Hearing his words, I felt a mixture of anger and fear. I knew he was threatening us, but I couldn't just stand by and watch Xiaowei in danger. How should I respond to this crisis, and can I protect Xiaowei? Where will our fate lead us? It seems that this crisis has only just begun. Holding the phone, listening to the threatening voice of the mysterious man on the other end, my hands unconsciously clenched, and my knuckles turned white from the force. My anger was burning within me. I had never imagined that he could be so heartless, that he would let the entire city panic and put countless lives at risk in order to achieve his goal. But at the same time, fear was also ever present. After all, Xiao Wei's safety now hung in the balance of his decision. "You crazy man! What do you want?" I yelled at the phone, trying to make my voice sound firm and powerful, but the panic within me was still hard to hide. The mysterious man on the other end of the line snickered. "You know very well what I want. Give Xiao Wei to me, and I promise you won't be harmed by these bats. As you know, these mutant bat cubs will cause unimaginable consequences once they attack. I don't want to see you and Xiao Wei become their prey." I gritted my teeth and turned to look at Xiao Wei. Her eyes were full of fear and helplessness, and her body trembled slightly. I knew that I couldn't easily hand Xiao Wei over, but if I didn't agree to his demands, the danger we faced would also be real. "Lin Yu, don't listen to him. Even if I die, I won't go with him," Xiao Wei suddenly said firmly. Her voice trembled, but it revealed a sense of determination. My heart warmed, and I gripped the phone in my hand even tighter. "Don't be delusional. I will never give Xiao Wei to you. Sooner or later, you will be punished by the law for all the evil you have done." The mysterious man's voice became even more menacing. "Well, then don't blame me for being rude. I will let you know what happens when you offend me." After saying this, he hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Wei and I looked at each other and saw determination in each other's eyes. We knew that every moment ahead was fraught with danger, but we would never give in to the mysterious man. Just then, the noise outside grew louder and louder. The cries of the mutant bat cubs and the screams of the people intertwined, as if it were a symphony of death. Suddenly, several bats crashed into the window, and cracks appeared in the glass. I quickly pulled Xiao Wei and hid in the corner of the room, hugging her tightly. "Lin Yu, if we really can't escape, I want to tell you that I really love you. I regret the wrong things I did before, and I just hope that we can get through this together," Xiao Wei said chokingly in my arms. I stroked her hair and comforted her gently. "Don't talk nonsense. We will definitely be fine. I promised you that I will protect you, and I will definitely be able to do it." However, the situation was becoming increasingly critical. It wasn't long before the windows could no longer withstand the battering of the bats and shattered to the ground with a loud crash. Several bats flew in, their eyes glowing eerily green in the darkness, their wings flapping and sending up a sickeningly fishy smell. I grabbed a baseball bat and stood in front of Xiao Wei, ready to fight these bats to the death. Just then, the door suddenly burst open and a group of people in protective clothing rushed in. They were armed with professional trapping nets and weapons, and quickly subdued the bats in the room. The leader took off his helmet, and I looked closely and saw that it was my friend who worked at the research institute. He panted, "Luckily we arrived in time. These bats are too dangerous." I felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, we would be in danger." My friend nodded. "We have located the mysterious man. He will not escape this time. However, it seems that he is still making a last-ditch effort, so you must be careful." Just then, there was a burst of intense gunfire and shouting outside. My friend's colleague's voice came over the walkie-talkie. "He's over there. Don't let him get away." My friend said to me, "You guys hide here first, and wait until we catch him and make sure it's safe before you come out." With that, he led the others out again. Xiao Wei and I hid in the room, listening to the commotion outside, our hearts filled with worry. I don't know how long it was before the outside finally quieted down. Suddenly, the door was pushed open gently, and a bloody man walked in. I looked closely, and it was the mysterious man. His face was covered in scars, but his eyes were full of madness. "Lin Yu, do you think you can escape? As long as I'm alive, you won't have a good time," the mysterious man said viciously. I protected Xiao Wei behind me and looked at him warily. "You have no way out, surrender." The mysterious man suddenly laughed. "Surrender? I will never surrender. Since I can't have Xiao Wei, no one else can." After saying that, he took out a device from his bosom and pressed a button. I was shocked and realized that something was wrong. Just then, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded in the room. It turned out that he had activated a device, attracting more mutant bats. Soon, the room was filled with bats again. The mysterious man took the opportunity to pounce on Xiaowei, and I didn't hesitate to rush up and wrestle with him. In the chaos, I felt a bat's claw grab my back, and a sharp pain spread. But I didn't care about that. I just clung to the mysterious man to prevent him from harming Xiaowei. Xiaowei was shouting my name loudly. Suddenly, she saw a metal rod on the ground. She picked it up and smashed it over the mysterious man's head. The mysterious man let out a scream and fell to the ground. At that moment, the voices of the rescuers came from outside, and they finally arrived. They quickly subdued the bats and took the mysterious man away. Xiaowei and I slumped to the ground, looking at each other with joy in our eyes. We hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down our faces. "Lin Yu, we're finally safe," Xiaowei said, crying. I stroked her face. "Yes, we're safe. From now on, nothing will ever separate us." The crisis of life and death was finally over, and we were even more determined to love each other in this crisis. After going through so much, we know that only by supporting each other can we overcome all difficulties. And that mysterious man will also pay the price for what he did. Our lives will also begin again and move towards a better future. After that thrilling crisis of life and death, Xiaowei and I felt as if we had just woken up from a nightmare. We embraced each other tightly, tears streaming down our faces, both feeling relief at having survived and remorse at what had happened. After a long while, we slowly parted, our eyes still showing signs of fear, but also full of hope for the future. After the rescue workers took the mysterious man away, the room was in a mess. The broken window, the scattered objects, and the few subdued mutant bats seemed to be telling the story of the fierce battle that had just taken place. I took Xiaowei's hand and walked out of the room. Seeing the scene outside, I couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in my heart. The entire community was filled with an atmosphere of tension and fear. Some residents were crying in the corner, while others were comforting each other. Everyone's faces were filled with exhaustion and panic. Xiaowei and I walked around the neighborhood, and when we saw some houses that had been completely destroyed by bats, we felt full of anger and helplessness. I knew that this crisis had caused everyone tremendous harm, and the culprit was that mysterious man. Fortunately, he had been arrested, and I believed that the law would punish him appropriately. A few days later, the city gradually returned to its usual order. The government organized a large amount of manpower and resources to comprehensively disinfect and clean up the city, and also strengthened the supervision of similar scientific research projects. The injured residents received timely treatment, and everyone's lives are slowly returning to normal. Xiaowei and I also began to work hard to repair our lives. We cleaned the house together, rearranged the furniture, and tried to restore the warmth of our home. While cleaning, Xiaowei would occasionally stop and look at me, her eyes full of tenderness and gratitude. I knew that she was thanking me for protecting her in times of crisis, and I was also grateful that she had chosen to stay with me despite everything she had been through. However, it is not easy to completely forget that painful experience. Occasionally, Xiaowei still wakes up from nightmares, clinging to me tightly, trembling all over and saying over and over, "Lin Yu, I'm so scared. I'm afraid those bats will come back." I will gently stroke her back to comfort her. "Don't be afraid. Everything is in the past. There is no danger anymore." To help Xiaowei get over her fear, I decided to take her on a trip. We chose a quiet town with beautiful mountains and fresh air, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. In the town, we stayed in a cozy homestay. Every morning, we would go hiking together and admire the beautiful sunrise. In the evening, we would take a walk along the river and watch the sunset. Xiaowei's smile gradually returned, and her eyes became brighter. One day, we were wandering around the town market when Xiaowei saw a stall selling handmade jewelry. She was attracted to an exquisite bracelet. The stall owner was a kind old lady who enthusiastically introduced the item when she saw Xiaowei like it. Xiaowei tried it on, and the bracelet looked especially beautiful on her wrist. I looked at Xiaowei's happy face and bought the bracelet without hesitation. Xiaowei took the bracelet and her eyes sparkled with tears of emotion. She hugged me gently and said, "Lin Yu, thank you. This is the most precious gift I have ever received." During our time in the small town, we also made some new friends. They were very hospitable and invited us to their homes, telling us stories and legends about the town. We spent many happy times with them, attending bonfire parties and singing and dancing together. Xiaowei gradually became more outgoing, chatting and joking with everyone, as if she had returned to her carefree self. After the trip, we returned to the city. Although there were still some worries in our hearts about the past, we knew that we had gained enough courage to face the future. Xiaowei returned to work, working even harder than before, hoping to contribute to society through her work. And I also paid more attention to Xiaowei's life after work. Together, we made many plans for the future, such as getting a pet or learning a new skill. As time passed, Xiaowei got better and better, and a happy smile was always on her face. Our relationship grew deeper, and the trust and understanding we had for each other made our lives even better. Whenever we reminisce about those days of fighting the mutant bat cub and the mysterious man, there is still a trace of fear in our hearts, but more of a sense of gratitude for each other and a cherishing of life. One night, we sat on the balcony, looking at the stars twinkling in the night sky. Xiaowei leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "Linyu, I'm really glad to have you. After going through so much, I've come to realize that you are the most important person in my life." I turned my head and looked into her eyes and said seriously, "Xiaowei, the same goes for me. No matter what difficulties we encounter in the future, I will always be by your side, and together we will create a happy life of our own." After saying this, we smiled at each other and held each other's hands tightly. On this quiet evening, we seemed to see a beautiful picture of the future, full of sunshine, laughter, and endless love. We believe that as long as we work together, nothing can stop us from pursuing happiness. And our story will continue to be written in this city full of hope.